Hello friends, my name is Ryan, and today I'm going to tell you a story called The Haunted Stepwell, The Water That Drags You Down, which is a truly amazing story full of twists and turns that will leave you speechless. So, let's begin. In a small, forgotten village on the edge of the desert, there existed a stepwell, a place where the people used to gather to draw water. It was known as Kund Bordi, a name whispered with fear by those who had heard the legends. The villagers, now few in number, spoke of it in hushed tones, always careful not to go too close, especially when the moon was full. The story begins with a young man named Oriv, who had just moved to the village after the passing of his parents. He was determined to start fresh, to make a life away from the busy, noisy cities. He found a small cottage near the village outskirts, and every day, he would wander around, exploring the surroundings. One evening, as the sun began to set, Oriv decided to explore the old stepwell that lay deep within the village. No one spoke much about it, other than vague mentions of a curse, and Oriv, always curious and intrigued by the unknown, felt compelled to visit it. He had heard from some of the older villagers that there was a strange force around the well, something that didn't belong to the natural world. The stepwell was hidden among a thick grove of trees, far from the village's homes. It looked ancient, the stone walls cracked and weathered by time. A thick, still fog hung in the air, giving the entire area an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. As Oriv stood before it, he could feel a strange pull, as though something was drawing him toward it, beckoning him to come closer. Ignoring the chilling feeling in the pit of his stomach, Oriv approached the edge of the stepwell. The water at the bottom was dark and murky, yet it shimmered with an unnatural glow. The air grew colder, and the hairs on his neck stood up. Oriv took a deep breath and leaned closer to peer into the water. Suddenly, there was a soft, distant whisper that seemed to come from the well itself. "Oriv." The voice whispered, barely audible, yet distinct. His heart raced, and his body froze, but the voice came again, this time louder and clearer. "Oriv, come closer. Look into the water." Oriv shook his head, trying to push the voice away. But something inside him urged him to stay. He couldn't explain it, but there was a pull, a force that was impossible to resist. His gaze locked with the water, and slowly, the fog thickened, enveloping him entirely. He took a step forward, and then another. It felt as though the world around him was spinning, his senses dulled, his vision blurred, and he stumbled, falling to his knees at the edge of the well. He tried to pull himself back up, but his hands, his legs, they felt as though they were weighted down. The water was calling to him. "Help!" Oriv screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the thickening mist. His fingers grazed the surface of the water, and in an instant, a cold hand gripped his own, dragging him closer, pulling him into the depths. Panic surged through Oriv's body as he tried to scream, but no sound escaped. His vision began to fade as the water enveloped him, pulling him under, dragging him deeper into the well's dark embrace. Days passed, but Oriv was not seen again. The villagers grew worried, but no one dared to speak of the well. Some thought he had gone mad, others believed he had simply disappeared into the desert. But a small part of them feared the legend was true, the curse of the haunted stepwell. Months later, a group of curious travelers arrived in the village, eager to learn about the mysterious well. Among them was a woman named Myra, a journalist with a passion for uncovering the truth. She had heard rumors of the stepwell, and despite the warnings from the villagers, she was determined to explore it herself. Myra was no stranger to danger, having investigated countless haunted sites across the country. But something about this place felt different. The village was quiet, too quiet, and the air felt thick with an unspoken tension. She spoke to some of the villagers who were too scared to even look in the direction of the well. Yet Myra, driven by her curiosity, made her way towards the stepwell. As she walked through the grove, she felt an unease settling in her chest. The fog, too thick to see clearly through, wrapped around her like an old friend. The stepwell loomed ahead, just as it had for centuries, its stones cracked and broken by time. But what struck Myra most was the stillness, the eerie silence that seemed to hang in the air. Myra cautiously approached the edge of the well, her heart racing. She could feel the pull, just as Oriv had, but she was determined to resist it. Yet, the whispers began. Low and insistent, they circled around her, drawing her in. Myra, come closer. Look into the water. Myra froze, her blood running cold. The voice was unmistakable, it was the same voice Oriv had heard. She shook her head, stepping back from the edge, but the whisper grew louder. She could feel the presence of something watching her, something that had been trapped here for too long. She felt a hand on her shoulder, ice cold and sharp. It wasn't her own reflection in the water anymore. Instead, she saw Oriv's face staring back at her, his eyes wide with terror. Save me, Myra. His voice echoed, faint but desperate. Save us all. The water began to swirl violently, pulling at her, dragging her toward the depths. Myra screamed, her body fighting against the invisible force that tried to drag her in. She struggled, but the grip was too strong. As she looked into the water one last time, she saw a figure, emerging from the dark depths, a pale, ghostly face. And in that moment, she knew what had happened to Oriv. The Stepwell was not just a source of water, it was a prison for lost souls, those who had been lured into its depths and never returned. And now, it had claimed her too. As the sun began to rise, the village remained eerily quiet. No one spoke of the Stepwell anymore, no one dared to approach it. It stood there, a silent, menacing monument to the lost souls who had fallen victim to its curse. But if you listen carefully, if you wander too close when the night is still and the moon is full, you may hear the whispers of Oriv, Myra, and others who have been dragged down by the water. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll feel the pull of the haunted Stepwell too. So, if you want to hear more such stories, friends, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll be back soon with another spine-chilling tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay curious, and remember, the darkness never forgets those who dare to seek its secrets.